Again, we'll get into that later. I just want to intuitively note how easy it is to build the chords just from skipping every other note within the continents that we are on at this time. Once we talk about scale degrees, we'll get back here and then compare the scale degrees. Okay, so if we're on the Lydian, that would be the 4. We usually call that the 4 chord. So instead of the 1, I'm not going to change. What I want to do now is not change it to the 1. So if I go over here on the fretboard, I'm on the 4 chord. I can still build a bar chord, which has all the relative same positions, but it's not the same thing because the intervals are not the same. Or right now, let's just think of the shape is not the same. So all of the modes are not the same. The first 3 happen to have the same relative position, which is why we use the same name. All right. So I'm going to call it a Y for the Lydian. What would we normally call it? An F major. So why would we call it? And notice that the F major is the same as the C major. Now there's one benefit to that, and that is that the name is unique that way, right? If I say if it's an F major, I'm starting on that F note and I'm stacking thirds on each other, and it's the same. It'll always be it's kind of like a unique chord. However, it doesn't give me as much contextual context within the song if I name two chords the major, because from the context of the song, it's not the same chord, right? It has a different feel within the context of the song. And my concern composing is the context of the song. So when I say I'm going from the 1 to the 4 is different than the 1, or the chord that's being built is different. And it might be that the 4 even is the tonal center. Even if that's the tonal center, I still want to call it the 4 because it'll tell me where I am on the guitar, right? And it'll also tell me what I can reach or how I can extend that chord to be in the same key if I'm playing in the key of Lydian, because it's a different chord. So it would be better in my opinion, and I think this is uncontroversial really from a playing standpoint, particularly on the guitar, is to name it by mode. Say, look, no, the 4 chord is different. I can call it from the Nashville music system the 4 chord. Even if it's the tonic, I'd still like to call it the 4 chord, right? Because it's the Lydian chord, and it has a different intervals in it. Not all the intervals are the same. It has an augmented fourth, right? So we'll talk about that later. So it'd be better to call it. Now, why do I call it a Y? Because we don't want to call it an L, because that kind of looks like a 1. So I put a Y for the Lydian. Why do we have it a 2 instead of a 3-note chord? We say by default it's going to be a triad, a 3-note triad, but this is a distance term. So we're going to start on the F Lydian, and then we're going to go up to modal whole steps, right? Up 2 modal whole steps from that point. That would be the idea. Now that gives us the context within the song. And so, like I say, if you're playing in Lydian, then it would be nice to say if that was the tonic, I can make that the capital even. And it would be nice to know that I'm playing in Lydian by having it identified in the chord name. Whereas if I use an F major, this F major doesn't tell me if it's the tonal center, and it doesn't tell me whether or not I'm playing in Lydian, or the major key, Ionian, or Mixolydian. I don't know. I don't really know. All 3 of them would have the same 3-note triad chord name. See, so this would be way more specific, even though it's the same 3 notes, because it'll tell you that the song has a chord tonal center of Lydian, so that's really helpful. I feel like. So that means that we're going to start here on Lydian, and we'll do the same thing. That's going to be our center point. Now, the scale degree will force us to rename it, making that the 1, and this would be the 3 and the 5. But what I would rather say is, no, let's keep that as the node we're on, the 4, and say it's distance terms. It's 0, up 2 modal half steps, and up 2 modal half steps. So let's see what that would look like. We're going to say, okay, let's erase that and go, okay. So we would start on the Lydian now, and we'd say that's the node we're on. I'm not going to rename it. I'm just going to measure from there. So that's point 0 plus 2 modal half steps, which would be 1 modal whole step, plus 2 modal half steps, which would be 1 modal whole step. So we have a 0, 2, 4. What if I made this the 1? and made a scale out of it, right? Well, then everything would be off by 1. We would say now it's going to be the 1, 3, 5. So all of these are going to be increased by 1. So just remember that the scale degrees are all off by 1. If you want to know the distance terms so that you don't, like when you're building a chord off of this 4, and you're like, how am I going to build this? All I need to do to build the triad is skip every other note in order to build it. That's of the 7 notes in the chord, but I don't want to rename that as the 1. I'm just going to drop it down. So if someone says it's the 1, 3, 5 scale degrees, that means it's the 0, 2, 4, right? It's 0, 2, 4 distance from this point. I don't need to rename the 4 to the 1 to do that. Do you see how much better that is? Because if you keep renaming this to the 1, you're doing more work. You don't need to rename it to the 1. What you want to do is say, I'm measuring distance from that point. To communicate with people, everything will be off by 1. They're going to say it's the 1, 3, 5, and you're just going to be like, okay, that just means it's the 0, 2, 4. And even if you use 1, 3, 5, just remember that those are basically distance terms. Don't let it force you out of visualizing the guitar in the way that's the most flexible. So that would be that if I start on the 4 and I name my nodes, now we're not starting on the 1, it's the 4. And then we go up 2 from there, giving us to 6, and then we go up 2 from there, 7, back to 1. So if I name the notes in the chord, that's not as effective as to name the nodes in the chord. How do I build this Lydian chord? How do I build a YF2? It's the Lydian, Aeolian, Ionian. What if I'm in a different key? Well, are we still doing the Lydian chord? Well, then it's the same. It's the Lydian, Ionian. It's the Lydian, Aeolian, Ionian. From a Nashville music, it's the 4, 6, 1 all the time. If I rename the scales, this doesn't work. This is really helpful. If I don't want to rename the name, because then I can't list the chord by the nodes that are in the chord, which is really useful. It will give you a lot more information about the song that you're building to call it something like an YF3. Why a YF3? Because we're going to say it's a 4-note chord, which is going to be a Lydian F chord with 3 modal whole steps from the node we're on. So it's the node we're on plus 3 modal whole steps. And if we want to make it the tonic, we can capitalize the Y. So that's going to give us a lot more information. See, because once again, it tells us, hey, look, if this is the tonic, I can see that that's going to be the center point of the song, and we're not playing then. That tells us, I don't have to say, hey, look, we're playing in the Lydian mode. We can just see from the chord that it's a Lydian chord. So you can't see it from the chord if you just call it a major chord. If you just called it a major, you'd have to say, hey, look, it's a major chord, but we're playing in Lydian, which a lot of people will get confused about. If you say, hey, look, we're playing from Lydian, and you memorize the fretboard in terms of where the Lydian point is, no matter what key you're playing in, you will start to be able to visualize the fretboard, all the 7 continents relative to that point. So it gives you a lot more information about the song, and you can easily convert it to say, well, the Lydian is the 4 chord. You could say the 4 is a major chord. So you can always talk to someone and say, well, we're on the 4 chord. We're on the Lydian chord. It's a major chord, right? Okay, and so then what are going to be the points? Well, it's going to be the Lydian has point 0, and then we're going to go up 2 modal whole steps, or 2 modal half steps, or 1 modal whole step, and then another 2 and another 2. So we can call that then distance-wise, we're on the 0, 2, 4, 6 from the more scientific, modern way, the engineer's way of what we would call it. Well, but if we tie that into the scale degrees, it's all off by 1. So if I made the Lydian, the 4 node, the 1, and built a scale from it, we would say that we're on the scale degrees of the 1, 3, 5, 7. So remember, if someone says we're playing a 1, 3, 5, 7, you could just drop it down and say we're playing from the 4 node, the 0, 2, 4, 6. Those are actually the distances in a way that doesn't force you to rename the node that you're on. Why? Because I'd like to be able to say the chord name by nodes. I'm on the 4 node.